Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Today we will continue with our practical class that is about raising of anti-sera. So last class we had discussed that to whom we can call antigen and how we can produce antibody against that one. So this is a schematic diagram that antigen contain different epitope, and once this antigen, or in better language you can say this immunogen, when immunogen is inoculated in suitable host immune system will provide response against this one, and that will produce some immune molecules. Either they are antibody or some other molecules. Here in this case, if they produce antibody, then they must be diverted or directed against all these four epitope. So all this type of antibody are supposed to bind with their corresponding epitope, and mixture of this antibody and the clone, if we can isolate it, then we can tell them polyclonal antiserum or monoclonal antibody respectively. So polyclonal in general sense we can say that that is a mixture of antibody that can directed against different epitope. In contrast to this, if we can see the monoclonal antibody are those antibody which are directed against single epitope. They are very specific for that particular epitope, and that's why they are considered as a monoclonal. Generally, they are derived from a single clone. So, in the preceding steps for production of monoclonal antibody, we need to take out particular clone, and we can go for production of antibody using that clone. So this is a general background, and same background we had also covered in our last practical. Now, before starting to today's practical, that is how to raise the hyperimmune sera, we should know that to whom we can call blood, plasma and serum and their difference. So there is no need to give introduction about blood, okay. But there is a little difference between plasma and serum. So we cannot use these two words interchangeably. If our target is to collect the plasma, then the blood must be collected in suitable anticoagulant vial, and once you will collect, then you have to go for centrifugation, and then you will get like this: the lowest part that contain the red blood cells, the middle portion interface, generally that is known as Buffy coat, and that is rich in WBC cells, and the upper aqueous or supernatant, that is generally considered as a plasma. Now, if you want to collect the serum, then your blood sample must be collected in clot activator vial, or you can say plain. There should be no anticoagulant in that vial. Preferably glass vial is selected over the plastic one to get the better serum harvest. And once you will collect the blood, you have to allow that to clot. So clotting may vary from few minutes to hour. Once clot get formed, then you have to allow that to retract the clot at lower temperature, generally at 4 degrees. So once clot get retracted, a clear straw colored fluid will oozes out. That is generally known as serum. That serum can be separated well after clotting if you can perform a centrifugation. So you will get the clot at the bottom of a year tube, and at the top or supernatant, that is considered as a serum. In simple language, we can say that serum equal to plasma minus clotting factors. Means a little difference between plasma and serum is plasma contain all the clotting factors, as we are not allowing blood to clot for plasma harvest, whereas in case of serum we have to allow blood to clot, so that all the clotting factors, they are generally utilized for formation of clot. That's why serum is generally devoid of clotting factors. So this is a little difference, but it must be you must be kept in mind when you have to collect the plasma, then it must be collected in anticoagulant vial, whereas you want to collect the serum, then it must be collected in plain or clot activated vial. So this is basic difference between blood, plasma and serum. And plasma and serum have different applicability, and that's based on our utility. We have to select whether we have to go for plasma collection or for serum collection. Now, after collection, after clearing this one, now we will come to the main slide, that is how to raise the hyperimmune serum. Immune serum, we had discussed that serum that contain the specific immunoglobulins, or we can say the immunoglobulins, they are the antibodies. So serum that contain the specific antibody, that is known as immune serum. But hyper means those antibody or target antibody must be present in very large amount. So it must be present in sufficient large amount so that we can go for isolation of that antibody, and we can utilize that antibody either for therapeutic aspect or for development of some diagnostic test. So that's why they are considered as hyperimmune serum. Now, how we can raise the hyperimmune serum? Generally, if you want to go back to the earlier slide, I had told that once antigen enter inside the body immune system will react against that antigen after recognition that one, and as a part of that reaction, that will produce some immune molecules, and there might be an antibody production. So this might not be at the sufficient amount, because our purpose or the nature purpose is not to produce that antibody in very large amount, but for our own interest, sometimes we need to raise the high amount of antibody in the host cell or host body. In such cases, we have to follow protocol for production of hyperimmunity. The three basic things we must know before starting of raising up this thing. That is one. That is the first. That is, you should have antigen. Okay. Second, that is uh, first, that is antigen. Second, that is adjuvant, and third, selection of lab animal. Now we will see one by one. Preparation of antigen we had already covered in our last class, that different type of antigen are present over the bacteria or inside the bacteria. There are different toxins. Even we can say there are biotechnology based synthesized peptides can be used as antigen, or recombinant protein can be used as antigen. So any molecules which is foreign and that is capable to elicit the immune response, that can be used as an antigen. The thing we have to keep in mind that antigen must be pure, and it must be in the native form, and it should be in sufficient quantity. The second thing, adjuvant. Adjuvant may or may not be needed in all the case, but adjuvant, add means that will add something to whatever existing capacity or existing reaction. So adjuvant generally added in addition to antigen to enhance the immune response against that antigen. Generally, fluids complete adjuvant, fluids incomplete adjuvant, or various type of aluminum salts are available, or there are some proprietary adjuvants are also available by many manufacturers like Montanite gel. This can be used along with antigen to stimulate the immune response, and that is known as adjuvant. The third, that is selection of lab animal. It's critical because we have to keep this animal for at least 2 or 3 months, and we have to maintain them in such an environment that they will produce the maximum immune response. So that's why their size is also matter. The cost of animal, that also matter, because that ultimately end up with final cost of our product, and that animal must be healthy. Why they are healthy? If they are not healthy, if they have some inherent infection, then our immune system or immune response might be directed against that particular infection, and we may not get the sufficient immune response against our target antigen. So generally we are using rabbit and mice for production of hyperimmune serum, and in principle we are using rabbit as a ideal model for production of hyperimmune serum, and that's why we are considered rabbit as a queen for hyperimmune serum. At the same time, it must be strike to your mind that the queen of complement is guinea pig. Okay, mice can be used. Okay, generally mice is used when we are targeting or when we are producing monoclonal antibody. In such cases, bulbsy mice generally use. Sheep, goat, horse, donkey, other species can be used, and horse immune serums are generally used in human as a toxoid or some antitoxin antibody, or in some other cases like rabies anti-rabies antibody production. But in general, rabbit is used. Sex generally that will not interfere, but there are some exceptions. They are showing that females are giving better immune response, or selection of sex is important because that will interfere in managemental aspect. So we have to cautious whether we have to keep them in one cage or in different cage. Based on our caging system and management, we can select the specific sex of the animal. Generally, age is also matter. Too young may not be giving sufficient immune response. Too old, that may also not give the sufficient immune response, or it may be infected with some other infection. So the young, in case of rabbit, around 6 month age is considered as ideal for raising of hyperimmunity. Now, once you have these three parameters, that is antigen, adjuvant, and lab animal, then second step, that is production of emulsion. Production of emulsion means mixing of antigen and adjuvant in a such a way that will give a stable, white, thick, creamy suspension. And this must be achieved. This must be achieved in a such a way that it cannot be separated and it will remain stable over the longer time. Generally, double-edged locking hub means there are two injections that can be locked, that can be joined from end to end, and where in one injection we can take an antigen, whereas in another syringe we can take an adjuvant, and then we have to repeatedly plunging them so that they get mixed and we get the uniform emulsion at the end. This emulsion or stability of emulsion that can be tested by keeping a drop of that emulsion over the water. If your emulsion is good, then that drop should remain intact on the surface of water. If your emulsion is not best or they are not complete one, then that will get dissociate over the water surface. In such case, we require again to mix this adjuvant antigen till we get the stable adjuvant. Now, once we get the emulsion, then we have to go for immunization. There are different aspects we have to keep in mind. The first and most important, that is route of immunization. Route of immunization generally depends on what type of antigen we are using. If antigen are smaller amount, we may need to go for some different route. If antigen in larger amount and sticky or oily in nature, then we have to go for some other route. So nature of antigen is playing important role. The second, that is a type of adjuvant we are using. If adjuvant is oil based, then definitely we have to use some route that can harbor a larger amount of volume. And last, that is a species of animal. The species of animal is also important because if you want to go for IV inoculation, if animal or species is smaller, then it would be difficult. And we cannot get the larger surface area if animal is small. So depend on species, type of adjuvant and nature of antigen, we can select that what route and what dose we can decide for production of hyperimmune serum. In general, if we are using the rabbit, then in case of rabbit, generally initial immunization we are perform intramuscular or subcutaneous, and at the last or final booster we are giving by intravenous. But the immunization schedule may vary from antigen to antigen, from species to species, from adjuvant to adjuvant. That's why the schedule of immunization is not fixed. but it must be standardized or optimized in your laboratory based on type of adjuvant and antigen you are going to use. And once you will complete your immunization, then you can go for test bleed and final bleed. Test bleed means you are taking the small amount of blood, separating the serum, and finding out or titrating whether the proper antibody produced or not in that particular serum. That is known as test bleed. In case of test bleed, you are getting the sufficient amount of target antibody, then you can go for final bleed, where you will get the maximum amount of antibody, or you can harvest maximum amount of antibody. But in case of test bleed, if you are not getting the sufficient amount of your target antibody, then again you have to go for re-immunization. And again you have to go for test bleed, and if you will get the sufficient antibody, then final bleed. Otherwise you have to terminate and you have to reinitiate your entire protocol from new type of species or new animals. So this is in brief about the outline of raising of hyperimmune serum. Now, this is general schedule or the parameters generally we have to follow when we are selecting immunization schedule. The, already we had discussed in earlier slide, but I kept so we are talking about immunization schedule and different important parameters of immunization schedule. So first and important, that is route of inoculation. So earlier I had discussed that route of inoculation is important, and that is generally depend on type of antigen, species, and type of adjuvant we are going to use. The second, dose of antigen. Okay, appropriate or you can say optimum dose is an ideal condition for raising a maximum response from that antigen. So optimum dose need to be decided. If you are using underdose, your immune system may not able to respond very well. If your dose is over, then your immune system may undergo energy state where they cannot respond to your antigen. So optimum dose is also important criteria. Selection of adjuvant. Many times adjuvant contains some antigen that may divert your immune response. So that's why selection of adjuvant is also important, and it must add to the immune response. Otherwise, if that will not playing any important role, then there is no idea in adding adjuvant in your antigen. So selection of adjuvant, that is also important, and it based on the type of antigen you are going to use. Generally, killed adjuvant required the addition of adjuvants. Killed antigen generally required the help from adjuvant, whereas in case of live antigen, they may not require the adjuvant. This is a general statement. Now, next, that is number of inoculation. A single shot is never sufficient to raise the hyperimmune serum. This is general statement. You have to go for multiple inoculation so that repeatedly your immune system get boosted up, and that will produce the large amount of antibody against your target antigen. And that repeated inoculation requires some duration. Okay, so minimum week interval, or sometime 2 week or 3 week interval between two inoculation may be required. Then you have to go for final booster. Final booster means the last shot where you have to give the antigen, and that will be followed by test bleeding after appropriate time. So generally, final booster, either some author are preferring higher dose of antigen, whereas there are some literatures where they are telling that a small antigen is required in case of final booster. The principle behind using small antigen in the final booster, that will activate high affinity memory B cell only, so that you will get the antibody that have maximum affinity against your antigen. If you are giving high amount of antigen, then they will activate along with high affinity, they may also activate low affinity memory B cell. So you will not get the antibody that have highest affinity against your antigen. And generally that is giving by intravenous route. Okay, but this is not the compulsory for all the immunization setting. Then after test bleeding, the next that is test bleed. Okay, so test bleed generally if we need to perform minimum after 1 week of final booster dose, and maximum you can wait for 3 weeks. So in test bleed, you will take the small amount of blood from your animal. You can go for demonstration of amount of antibody raised against your target antigen. If you will get the sufficient amount of antibody in your test bleed, then you can go for final bleed. Okay? Final bleed means you are harvesting a maximum amount of serum from that particular animal, so that that maximum amount of serum can be used for suppression of your target antibody, and you will get the ultimate biological product. There are two ways that one, you can go for euthanizing of that animal and you can harvest the maximum blood and serum at the single time, or the second, you have to go for continuous inoculation along with repeated collection of serum. So you can collect the serum for longer duration, and ultimately total yield will be higher than the single bleed or single final bleed. Now, there is one scenario in contrast to this. In test bleed, if you are getting less amount of antibody against your target antigen, then in such scenario, you have to go for re-immunization. Re-immunization means again you have to go for boostering, either with higher antigen or with a different route or with a high different adjuvant, and again you have to follow the test bleeding. Now in this case, if you are getting the sufficient antibody, then you can go for final bleeding, and if you are not getting the sufficient, then you have to terminate your program and you have to reinitiate your program with a fresh antigen, adjuvant, and different animals. So this is the immunization schedule. Now for your easiness, I had kept one immunization schedule. Okay, this is just for your example, where I had given the protocol for raising hyperimmune serum in rabbit using 60-day protocol, and adjuvant are complete fruits adjuvant and incomplete fruits adjuvant, and route of inoculation is subcutaneous route. So this may be vary. In place of rabbit, we may use the mice or some other animal. In place of 60 days protocol, we may use 70 days protocol, 90 days protocol, 120 days protocols, or in place of this adjuvant, we may use alum or montanide or some other adjuvant. In place of subcutaneous route, we may use the intradermal or or intramuscular or intradermal route. So that depends. But for understanding, I took one protocol that will make this entire procedure simple to understand. The first day, that is considered as a 0 day, and here we require to collect the pre-immune bleed. Pre-immune bleed that will tell us about the antibody concentration on 0 day. So once you will collect your pre-immune bleed, then you have to go for primary injection. Okay, so primary injection generally that is with a higher antigen, generally that will given with complete fruits adjuvant. The second dose that is considered as a first booster, that is generally followed on 14th day, or you can say after 2-week interval of first or primary injection. That is followed with a less antigen, and here incomplete adjuvant is used. So in case of first or primary dose, complete fruits adjuvant is used, whereas in case of second dose, that is incomplete fruits adjuvant is generally used with less antigen. Now second and third booster may vary. You can give at the 2-week interval or 3-week interval, and in between you can collect the serum that may be considered as a test serum or test bleed. Once you will get the sufficient amount of antigen, you can go for final bleed, or you can go for third or final booster. and again you can go for test split. If you are getting sufficient amount, then you can go for serum collection. So this is a example of raising hyperimmune serum in rabbit using 60-day protocol following uh, fluence complete adjuvant, incomplete fluence adjuvant, and subcutaneous route. Now, this is the last slide where final collection, for final bleeding we have to collect the serum collection. So earlier I had mentioned that we have to collect the blood in clot activator vial, and we have to go for allowing them to clot, and after clot you have to go for centrifugation, and supernatant you have to collect, that is known as serum. So species wise, what will be the ideal site? We had already mentioned in our first practical, but here I had enlisted for your easy reference. And once you will collect the serum, then what precaution you have to keep in mind? The first, try to collect the serum as much as possible, and it must be free from RBC. If RBC get lice, then it may interfere in your subsequent procedure. The second, if possible, try to collect the serum in sterile condition, so that there is a least contamination and that will minimum interference in subsequent procedure. If you cannot collect in sterile condition, then go for filtration as a sterilization of serum. So you can use the 0.22 or 0.45 micrometer filter, and you can filter the serum, and then you can use or store that serum for your future reference. Sometimes heat inactivation is required, and heat inactivation is generally achieved by keeping your serum at 56 degrees centigrade in water bath for 30 minutes. And the purpose of doing this inactivation is complement inactivation. So this complement inactivation is important because many times complement may interfere in your subsequent test. That's why you have to go for heat inactivation. And generally such question may be asked in your exam about heat inactivation. Once you had heat inactivity, then you may need to add some preservative. It is not ideally every time required to add the preservative, but in some situation when you are planning to store the serum for longer time, you may use DMS or chloroform, or if you want to check the bacterial contamination, then sodium azide or sodium fluoride at the rate of 0.1% you can add in serum, that will check the bacterial growth and that will prevent the serum for longer duration. Sometimes some literature they are also telling to add the mercurate at the rate of 0.01% to store the serum for longer duration. Now, after adding preservation, you can go for storage of that serum. So generally, if you want to store the serum for few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, then 4 degree is ideal. But when your target or your motto or your hyperimmune serum is precious, then it is advisable to store at -20 or -70 degrees centigrade so that it can store for longer duration. The only thing you have to keep in your mind that when you are storing serum at the lower temperature, then it must not go for repeated freeze thaw, because every freeze thaw will reduce the amount of antibody and that will reduce the efficacy of your serum. Okay. So you have to avoid the repeated freeze thaw, and to avoid the repeated freeze thaw, you can store them in smaller aliquot with smaller volume of amount. So you have to divide your serum in smaller aliquots, and you can store at the lower temperature. Whenever required, you can take out one aliquot and you can use and you can throw that. So that will avoid the repeated freeze thaw, contamination, and it will help to preserve your serum for longer duration. And if your antigen or the serum is very costly, if you can afford, then go for lyophilization. Lyophilization means freeze drying. You have to freeze dry your serum at lower temperature so that your serum get converted into powder form. You can seal that powder in glass vial under the vacuum condition, and you can store that vial for many years without deteriorating the quality and quantity of that particular antibodies. So these are the different method of storage of serum. So this is all about today's class, that is how to raise the hyperimmune serum. In next class, we will deal about how to purify antibody from this hyperimmune serum.